Brad Holmes was at the podium yesterday, and he was talking about how you should expect this team to be there each and every year now competing for Super Bowls. And to do that, you need a quarterback. The Detroit Lions have a quarterback. And I don't think there's any doubt, really, that the Detroit Lions are going to sign Jared Goff to an extension. And you better get comfortable with north of $50 million, $50 million or higher for that. Here's what Brad Holmes said yesterday at the podium when he was asked if he's had conversations with Jared Goff or his representatives on an extension.
In terms of Jared, look, I've always had belief in Jared. You guys have always heard me that. I don't think, I don't know what more needs to be said from a leadership or performance standpoint, or what more he needs to do in that regard. But in terms of the belief, as always, I think I said this to you guys before, is that, he got drafted in 16, and, he wasn't a full-time starter, but 17 was his first year as a full-time starter, and he made the playoffs. And, got exited versus the Falcons that year, but the second year as a full-time starter, he went to a Super Bowl. And what I didn't understand why his career was defined after he went to a Super Bowl a second year as a full-time starter. And so then when he came to us, I always had belief. So him doing what he did this past year or even the year before, it's not a surprise to us. I just know how he's wired. I know the talent he has. I know the leadership he has. I know his mental and physical toughness. I know what he's made about. And I think his peers and definitely his teammates recognize the same thing. So just happy that what he's done, and, couldn't be more proud of everything he's achieved.
Bray, is there any question in your mind that Jared Goff is the quarterback of the future of the Detroit Lions?
When you say future, there's no question at all. How long is that future? That remains to be seen. What I think Jared Goff has earned in the city of Detroit, you saw what he did at the end of last season, how well he played. You saw what he did this year. When Jared Goff was on, when the team was on, Jared Goff made plays. Jared Goff was one of the top 7 quarterbacks in terms of stats, in terms of what he did. Top 5 in terms of stats, interception and touchdown ratio, yards, completion percentages, QBR. Jared Goff was that for this team. He's earned himself a contract. Now when you talk about how long that contract, no, I don't think he earned himself a contract that's one of Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, or insert one of those guys that you're going to pay Josh Allen 5 years, $250 million, or blah, blah, blah. I think he's earned himself a contract more than Geno Smith did when he got paid by the Seattle Seahawks, but along those lines where you're looking to do a 3-year deal with an option after that third deal, upwards of $50 million a year.
3 for $150?
3 for $150. Look, it's the going rate. So don't talk about, he's not worth 50. Look at the quarterbacks that are getting paid in the NFL. Is the going rate now for a quarterback, especially a quarterback that has success like Jared Goff does, from the Los Angeles Rams, and now with the Detroit Lions, 2 playoff wins and knocking on the door of going to the Super Bowl. So I think he's a 3-year deal, option after the third, 150. That just is the going rate right now.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
Look at that picture.
And I think it's fair.
Guys. Look at that picture. Let's go to the big wall there for a second, Pete. Look at that picture. There's Jared Goff right in the middle of his team. They love this guy. He loves them. This is the guy that they're all rooting for. Brad Holmes was one of the guys that helped draft him. He's been to a Super Bowl, could have been to 2 here with us. You know what the scoop is. He's going to get paid. Braylon and Ryan, They laid it out. It is what it is. He's getting paid. He can win a Super Bowl. There's not a question in my mind that he can win a Super Bowl. Are there better guys out there? Perhaps. We don't know where they are yet, but there could be. He could be a guy that's on your team in Hendon Hooker. Right. We don't know what he has yet. And eventually, you're going to find out what he has. Going forward, it's Jared Goff. It's his team. This is his city. He loves us, and we love him.
100%. Jared Goff is the guy moving forward. He's earned the right to get an extension for 3 years. He's earned that right. But at the end of the day, the NFL is still a right-now business. What have you done for me lately business? Yep. If Jared Goff doesn't have the season next year and he's going into that second year, all right, you have to prove it again. We know what Jared Goff is. We know what he isn't. And right now, he's a starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions, and he should be paid an extension. But with that being said, we also know what he's not. So if another opportunity arises, if you see some things, some chinks in the armor that get worse, you have to make moves, and I think that's what Brad Holmes is good at. So he's going to get paid, and Brad Holmes will take care of the rest.
And he absolutely should.
Yep.
I don't think there's any question about it. And look, I think even the strongest supporter of the Detroit Lions over the years had questions of Jared Goff when he was traded here to Detroit. I think most people saw him as a throw-in on the deal to get those draft picks and get rid of Matthew Stafford. I'm not sure anybody outside of Brad Holmes and maybe Dan Campbell thought he would be the long-term solution here in Detroit. He has played himself into being that. There's no question in anybody's mind, I don't think, that he has earned the right to be the quarterback of the Detroit Lions and make $50 million a year, which is the going rate for above average quarterbacks. I think that's that is the bar, really.
40 is the low and goes up from there.
40, you're embarrassed.
Well, that's what Daniel Jones is making.
Yeah, you don't have a quarterback at 40.
I'm just saying.
You know?
They paid him that. I'd say that's the low, and then you go up from there.
Right. You're embarrassed to have a quarterback at $40 million.
The low is 47. Because that's what Daniel Jones wanted. It's not what he got. He got 42. You're not giving him 42 with Daniel Jones got. We saw how Daniel Jones fell apart. You talk about a guy that needs everything to be perfect. Well, that's another step in what Daniel Jones is. 47 is low, but you're not going to get 47. You're talking about a guy with 2 playoff wins. Hell, he's got more wins than Dak Prescott in the last 7 years. Dak Prescott's 12-5 every year. Yeah. So when you look at it from that point, he won when he was supposed to win. And you get taken care of. You should get taken care of.
So I've got 2 more Brad Holmes sound bites that I want to play for you. We'll do them one at a time in this portion of the discussion anyway. And we'll pick them apart and we'll talk about them. But I thought this was interesting too. Dan Campbell addressed it. It was about falling in love with players. When you win, how many times did Ken Holland for the Red Wings fall in love with a guy because you had so much success with the player? The Detroit Tigers did so as well. You fall in love with a guy because of the success you had as a team. How do you guard against just keeping guys on the roster because you like them, because you won with them, as opposed to continuing to grow the talent pool on this roster and continue to keep this window open for years to come? Here's what Brad Holmes said about that.
That's a fair question, Justin. Look, I think that comes down to the communication aspect that I was speaking to prior. Look, we don't believe in handouts. We're a culture of accountability and a culture of earning it. And our communication with all our players is there's going to be competition. Even conversations that we had are guys that we want to come back. We tell them all the time there's going to be competition. I think those guys understand that. So, and that's what we do. The best person. It's a meritocratic approach in terms of, the best is going to be the best. The best is going to be number 1. The second best is going to be number 2. And I think our players understand that. And I think our players respect that. Me and Dan are always honest about that. So, we don't undermine or overlook the contributions that they've put in the past. And, there's a little bit of emotional attachment because we've seen how those guys have grinded over the years. But they're well aware that we're in the business of improving and upgrading and adding competition, and that's what makes teams better is better competition.
I feel, Braylon, like this too, that whatever happens on any roster decision that the Detroit Lions make moving forward, whether they decide to sign a guy, re-sign a guy, extend a guy, or move on from somebody, it won't be a surprise to the player. Because I feel like these 2 guys will have been in contact with these players and let them know how they really feel about them, their place here with this team moving forward, if their plan is to re-sign them, if their plan is to extend them. So when we get word of it, it'll be news to us. I don't think it'll be news to the individual player because of that communication piece.
When you're dealing with corporations, you got to make some tough decisions. And it's a results-based business. That's what corporations are. The NFL is no different, and the organization, the Detroit Lions, are no different. It's a results-based business. How can we be better than we were last year? Where are situations that we might need to move on from, even if it's tough? Hey, I understand I bought this player in 3 years ago. This player he's become a staple with the city. He's become a friend of the locker room. He's a guy that's a brother. He's one of these teammates. But simply put, when I look at the film, when I turn the film on, this guy isn't giving the best at that position. I think we can get out of that position. Now, we needed that position. Hard decisions have to be made, but great GMs, great coaches are able to do that. Ryan, you hit the nail on the head. Those players that get cut or that aren't brought back, they'll be upset just in the sense that they're leaving the Detroit Lions and they feel like they helped put this thing together. They were a part of it. But at the end of the day, like you said, they won't be surprised. They were able to watch their film. They're able to know what their limitations are, or maybe what they see this team needs to get to the next level. And you got to be honest with yourself. Brad Holmes is going to do a great job of that. You heard him after the first playoff win. I love every guy in this room. Every guy in this room, Brad Holmes had a hand in bringing that guy here. So he feels that way. But at the end of the day, what's the next step? The next step is to make people feel good. It's not to keep fan favorites that may not contribute. It's to get this team to the next level, and the next level for the Detroit Lions is the Super Bowl, because they were knocking on the door. So it's going to be tough, but Brad Holmes is equipped to do it because it is a results-based business.
Dan Campbell said it the first game, Bray, against the Rams, when he gave the game ball to Jared Goff. He said, L.A. didn't want you, Detroit wants you. That's who wants you. He also said after the San Francisco game that this team's not going to be together next year. It's a different team. I'm going to lose some guys off this team. And you can see he's genuinely upset. He's probably his heart is already broke at the end of that game that they lost. Then he has to think ahead and say, we might not get back here again. And then he thinks again, oh my God, I'm going to have to let this guy go, this guy go, this guy go. How could I do that? I know their families. How could I do that to them? But like you said, man, it's a cutthroat business. It's a cutthroat business. Didn't they cut Don Muehlbach on his birthday? For crying out loud. I mean, it's a cutthroat.
They did have a balloon for him.
They had a balloon for him, and they cut him the same effing day. It's heartbreaking. Dan Skipper, how do you tell that guy to take a walk? How? But they do, and you move on. And the next day comes, and you forget, and you move, and you move on. It's life, man. When someone passes away, you feel awful. And then before you know it, it's next week already. Time marches on, man.
At the end of the day, look, man, it's a grown man business. I'm wearing this shirt, and it's very fitting for the story. Playing for the Jets, I thought I was going to play for the Jets forever. I leave Cleveland. I hated Cleveland. Got out of Cleveland. I escaped. It was like the escape from Alcatraz. Yep. And I get to the New York Jets. Fell in love with it right away. Fell in love with Rex, the culture, what they were building.
The city.
Of course. You know me. I'm hey, man. New York, man.
You got a place to go there, don't you?
100%.
Lots of things to do there.
There is. Yeah. There's never ending. The city never sleeps.
They just have a lousy stadium.
It's still new. Yeah. Newer, if you will. But I thought I was going to be there forever. I fell in love. The cleaning people, like the janitorial services, man, the people in the kitchen. Like, I loved everything about New York. Well, after my second year there, they made a decision to go in a different direction. They went with Santonio Holmes, not me, and a couple filler wide receivers to fill my space. It hurt. Like, it hurt. I thought I had built enough. I thought I had done enough. But they wanted Santonio. He was a Super Bowl MVP wide receiver. Can't hate on that. Had to move on to the next thing. It is what it is. That's a tough job for the GMs. I built myself up for the fan base there. But it's a tough job for the GM. They have to make decisions. It's also about money. Yeah, they can't pay Santonio Holmes and Braylon Edwards. It's about money. How can we maximize the player talent, but at the same time maximize the money spent as well? So it is a business, and Brad Holmes, unlike some of the other GMs I've been around, really cares about the players and really cares about this team. So he'll do it in the best of his ability. Very class.
2014, when the Lions lost to the Cowboys, when they got the game stolen from them, and Ndamukong Suh, who not showing emotions. I don't ever seen this guy cry, except that day when he cried on the podium that he knew he wasn't going to play in Detroit anymore. And I know a lot of people said when he came here, they never wanted to be here. I do believe that might be partially right. But I do believe that
you learn to love.
Yeah, you learn to love, and I believe he looked at that team and said, man, if I stay on this team, we really could go places. And it turned out they went down the drain without him. There's a decision they had to make. Who do we pay? Calvin, Matt, and Ndamukong. We're going to pay Matt. We're going to pay Calvin. And they let Sue walk, and the rest is history.
Hey, man, Jets ain't been to the playoffs since I left them. That's all I'm saying.
Amen.
Well, I was going to mention
that's
that.
all I'm saying.
Listen, I was going to mention that too, as in no joke.
Yeah.
We're in the Jets shirt today. I feel like it's appropriate to discuss that too, because you go to back-to-back AFC Championship games in 09 and 10.
It's over.
And the Jets have not been back to the playoffs since. Not been back to the AFC Championship game. Yeah. They haven't been back to the playoffs since. And I think, I'm not saying that the Detroit Lions aren't going to be back to the playoffs, but it's really easy to get in this period of time and think you're just going to show up every year. But I think that's what Brad Holmes is trying to talk about here as well. This is not something that we're going to be a flash in the pan. We're going to be very smart. We're going to be very direct. We're going to be very poignant on the decisions we make. But more importantly, we're going to be very pointed in the decisions that we don't make as well, so we can keep this window open as long as they possibly can. Because in the NFL, it is, I don't want to say easy. It's been 60 years, but it's relatively easy because the Detroit Lions got good in 3 years. If you really look at it, the Detroit Lions got good in 3 years.
After 60 years.
After 60 years.
But still, it was
got
3.
better in
this
Correct.
regime
Correct.
did it in 3 years, not 60.
What have I always told you about the Jets? They are the Lions of the AFC.
Yeah.
They are. They always were the Lions of the AFC.
One of my points is it's easy in the NFL to go from bad to good. The true test is, can you go from good to great?
Or sustain good. Yeah.
Can you sustain good and be great? That's really the true test in whatever field you're in. There's a lot of things you can do to be a bad company to be a good company. But can you go from a good company to a great company? And that's what the Detroit Lions are trying to do. I do have a piece of sound, unless you got something you want to add to that.
Yeah, I did. Does it sound on Brad Holmes?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, there's one thing that I want him to do. Go play the sound.
All right, here it is.
Remember what you're going to say, though.
This is Brad Holmes talking about the difference between operating now from a bad team. Now you're operating from a position where you're a good team.
It's going to be the same exact process. It's going to be the same exact plan. You know, we're going to be very strategic, very selective. We're going to look for the same type of players. You know, again, it doesn't need to be. I know I referenced, you know, when we've had, you know, multiple ones, and so now we're picking later back. Actually, that's exciting for me. That's like, man, it's kind of back to I think 21 draft. The other reason why I love that draft is, like, there was, like, no combine. You know what I mean? It was, like, you either had to know the film and pick the right players or not, you know, and actually know the player and have the right intangibles, where I think, you know, back there you're picking football players. And we're always picking football players. It's just that when we pick football players high, y'all have bashed us, you know, but we'll still continue to pick football players in the guys for us. So really, it doesn't change. Will it be different? Yes, it will be different. It maybe not be as many high-price external ads, but that's not required right now. So we'll just still keep sticking to our plan and go as normal. I think it's proven that it's working.
I'm listening to Ryan. I'm listening to Brad Holmes at the microphone, Ryan. I think you said something yesterday, and I think I might want to piggyback on that comment. Now, Brad needs to stop talking about who bashed who. Like I think, like, talking about what in terms of people bashing him for certain picks, bashing him for picking this guy over that guy, like, or
that's his pride talking.
And I understand that, but, like, I think we're past that now.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan said that, and I kind of gave him a slight pushback, but now I'm on the same board. Look, Brad, this city loves you. Like, these media people love you. Like, everyone in that room loves you. We know what you did. We know you're capable of, and we got your support. I think he needs to let that chip down, because I think it'll help him a little bit at that podium. But the last thing that I was going to say, going back to, is it's about knowing which players you can and cannot get rid of. It's about surveying the fans, surveying the locker room, and surveying that tape. Because I think one of the big things that a GM did in New York, or it was, he didn't pay attention to the players that he was letting go. One of the biggest staples for the New York Jets was Jericho Cotchery. Jericho Cotchery was team leader. He was a team chaplain. Whenever you needed to play, he wasn't expensive. He was a player that you're just used to seeing 87 in that green and white. And I think when they got rid of him, the same year they got rid of me, you lost a lot of people. You lost the locker room. You lost continuity that the team had. Make sure if you have to pull the trigger on players, make sure it's players that aren't necessarily going to hit that locker room that hard. Make sure you're getting rid of the right players.
I want to ask you something, right? When you knew you weren't going to be with the Jets, who told you, and did you go and talk to Rex, or what happened?
So Ben Dogger, my agent at the time, was with CAA.
I know that agent.
Yeah. Ben Dogger's a good guy. Not the rest of CAA, but Ben Dogger's a damn good guy. He called me. He told me, said they were going with San Antonio, and my thing was you can get both. But they paid San Antonio, I think 9, 3 years, 27. We could have just did 2, 7-5, 7-5. But it is what it is. It hurt, and I didn't go to Rex right away. I thought Rex would call me. Because me and Rex had a relationship. Yeah. Like, we had one of those ones where I spent a lot of time in his office. We talked about his father.
I'm surprised about that.
So when I went to Rex, it was, I don't want to get into all that. It's a little emotional still. But, like, I went eventually, and it got to the politics of the game. It got away from the relationships, and then you realize, you know what, it is a business. And then you have to remind yourself it's a business. Then it kind of hardens you to how the business works, and then you lose the love, and it becomes, all right, I need to go for this team, get a check, or I need to play somewhere I want to play. Now you're chasing the right situation.
Who was the GM?
Mike Tannenbaum.
Right.
Mike Tannenbaum. Great guy, just our situation didn't work out. And Mike's a great guy. Every time I see him, he speaks, he comes on the show. His daughter's at the University of Michigan in her junior year. It's just our situation didn't work out. He and San Antonio's agent were friends. But it happens, and then it's like, what's next? What's the next move? Yeah. And then you end up in San Fran. So it's a business. And I think sometimes we think it's family, and it is to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, they will always do what's best for them. So that's why people tell you have to do what's best for you too.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of the players too. I have completely changed how I approach my fandom, for lack of a better way to say it, when it comes to contracts as well. Because where I used to be on the team side of things, now I'm on the player side of things. Because you see how the players are treated in this league or any league, and it could probably be handled a lot better. But you've got to get your money when you can get your money for these players. That's why there's no hometown discounts or stuff like that. You go get your money when you can get your money.
I think Goff will give us a little bit of a hometown discount. I truly believe that.
What's a hometown discount to you?
I don't know. I just think he'll make his contract.
45? I think he'll make it a discount.
I think he'll make his contract similar to a contract that you push to the future.
See, a lot of those. Here's where I'll give you.
That's what I meant.
Here's where I'll give you some pushback on that, Maz. Jared Goff might want to do that, but what his agent and what the NFL will allow him to do are two different things. Yeah. Because if Jared Goff takes 45, you know who's getting 45 then? So less than 45.
I get it.
So when you're part of a union, you cannot do those things.
Understood.
And I think if it was up to Goff, he would probably do that.
But a lot of players do it into their contract years. Once the contract starts, they always push their money.
And it's always interesting ways. I think the first time I started seeing people get tricky with the contracts was Larry Fitzgerald and the Bidwells in Arizona. They would always push his back or give him something on the back end or pay him early or renegotiate his contract, do the deal, and, hey, we'll take care of you when you finish playing ball. It's all types of little deals like that go on. I mean, these guys aren't billionaires. Very
few times in the prime of a player's career, though.
Absolutely.
Very few. A lot of times.
Never in the prime, except for Brady.
Exactly. A lot of times you can do that at the end of a career. Brady was in year 14, year 15 when he started doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He played 8 more years under those contracts, but Brady even did that back then.